They've got all sorts of things: pomegranate, peach.
Like just drinking it raw or
No,
what?
no,
Or
you pour it over like ice cream.
oh.
Megan Fox.
And welcome to the spoiler room. We've been away for a while. We are live.
Whoops.
And tonight we are having a good laugh along with our scares for our 31 days of October. Hope everyone is watching your horror films. And tonight in the spoiler room crew, we're going to be talking about our favorite horror comedies. And the crew in the room tonight, well, we're going to start right off with crew regular himself, Mr. Cole Meredith. Hello, Cole.
Hey, man. How's it going?
It's going well. Glad you could join us as always. And the diva has returned to the spoiler room. The diva of the spoiler room herself, Miss Dawn. Hello, Dawn.
Hello.
And how are you tonight?
I am pretty good.
Awesome. Good to hear. And next to Dawn is the one, the only man himself. No introduction needed, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. The BFD, Glenn Bittner. Hello, Glenn.
Bow down and worship me.
I am bowing down to worship you. Don't hit me in the face. Anyway, then we have next to him, last but not least, Mr. Paul Salzar, Bowtie himself. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. Glad you could make it here tonight to talk about horror comedies, a genre that I think sometimes gets overlooked. And we're going to talk tonight about some of our favorites here brought to the table. And starting right off, we're going to start with Paul. Paul, why don't you tell us what film you brought with us to talk about tonight?
All right. I picked Seed of Chucky. Well, I know. I'm big on horror, not so big on comedy, so this is kind of fits closer to my genre. My selection is kind of a bit more dark humor than out-and-out comedy, but it's probably the only way that I'll ever say that it took 5 grown men to jerk off one plastic puppet. You have to know the scene and know the movie to know what I'm referring to. But give you an idea of what the movie is about. Brad Dourif returns as the voice of Chucky, that serial killer turned into killer doll. He is resurrected by his son this time, Glenn, who's voiced by Billy Boyd from the Lord of the Rings series. And then Chucky and Tiff basically arrive in Hollywood during this 5th installment of the Child's Play series. And Jennifer Tilly performs a double duty this time around, and she plays both herself and voices Tiff the doll, which is one of my favorite characters in this film. The film also includes John Waters and Redman. I don't know if you guys know those guys. And
No.
no or yes?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay, that's
I
great.
do know. We
And
just lost our host.
oh no! All right. Well, hopefully, hopefully Mark will make it back into the thing, or we can erase my Megan Fox comment from earlier, which I'm okay with.
He's not here. He can whatever you want. So, penis, 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 penis.
So we'll have to redo this.
No.
Keep going.
Keep
Yeah,
going.
come on,
Keep
man.
going.
Okay. Well, the movie contains plenty of references to the horror classics Halloween, Psycho, and The Shining. There's also a bit of Indiana Jones and Ed Wood thrown in because there's a character in there, their son, has kind of a gender confusion type thing because he's not anatomically correct, and so he has the option of becoming Glenn or Glenda, which again is an Ed Wood reference. So I thought that was kind of humorous, and again, this is more dark than humor and outright comedy, but I do enjoy the film very much, and it's one of those films that I would continue to watch over and over again. So Not as much because of the comedy aspect, but I'm more of a big horror fan than a comedy fan. So.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Hi, Mark.
Hello.
Welcome back, brother.
Apparently, you don't like Redman or John Waters as much as the rest of us.
Apparently not. So I totally missed your
Intro.
your
That's okay.
spiel
It'll be
there
a
for your
pleasant
film.
surprise.
It will be a pleasant
Yes.
surprise, and
There definitely weren't people saying penis a lot.
fine.
That's the drinking word for that.
Suddenly, we're just going to randomly say penis, and that will be the spoiled word of the evening. Okay, so luckily I've seen Seed of Chucky. And I'm sure Paul gave a rousing summary. So let's see.
What do you think, guys? Yes? No?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
We'll find a good cut here. So, okay, so Seed of Chucky. Dawn, have you watched Seed of Chucky, didn't you?
I did watch Seed of Chucky for the first time about 2 hours ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I own every other movie in the series, except for some reason I didn't own that one. So after looking for it for days and days and days, I finally broke down and just rented it. You know, the introduction to that movie, all I kept thinking is, really? What the hell is really? And then followed very much by, this is so wrong.
Well,
it was hugely entertaining. I loved all the bit parts, like you'd mentioned. Well, I'm not so much with the Red Man, but John Waters was brilliant. Not just him, Jason Fleming, with the small part he had as Santa, and there were a couple of others as well. But those are the two that are really standing out. That it was entertaining to see, and of course, Britney Spears gets killed, which is always a good thing.
It was a very meta movie. I really liked how meta it was.
It really was. And at the beginning, one of the what the fuck moments was the birthday cake, the big giant pink birthday cake, and the huge knife just stabbed in the top of it. Because that's what we do for our children's birthday cakes. We shove a giant knife right in the top of it and leave it out when we go to bed. Okay. That's my rant.
That's your rant. Glenn, what about you? Seed of Chucky?
Jennifer Tilly.
Yes, Jennifer Tilly.
That's
Boobs.
Boobs. Jennifer Tilly and boobs. And
Who had better boobs, Jennifer Tilly or Tiff the doll?
Oh, well, that's...
Well, someone's boobs are fake. I'm going to let you figure out whose.
It's softwood. Anyway.
I don't remember lots about the movie because it was, I saw it probably almost 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We actually did it would have been probably, I think, it would have been what, about 8 years. It was probably about 2007 where we did a Chucky marathon.
Oh.
I don't know why, but we did.
You say so much with silence, Glenn. I love it. And Cole, what about you with Seed of Chucky?
Man, I surprisingly really like this movie. I saw it the day it came out. I'm a huge fan of the series, actually. I think it's pretty consistently a good series, due in part to the fact that the same writer is attached to every movie, which says a lot. I mean, it really does. I can't name another horror franchise like that. I mean, Wes Craven came back and went in and out of the Nightmares, and Sean Cunningham ditto with the Fridays, and Don Mancini is pretty much there for every movie. Really kind of propelling these things. But I saw it when it came out. I should preface this by saying that Bride of Chucky, at least to me at the time and all of my friends, was a really big deal. I mean, it was funny and it was growth and it was entertaining and it's too bad, Ronnie, you didn't make as good of a movie with Freddy versus Jason, but that's neither here nor there. I think Bride of Chucky was really a smashing movie at the time, and we probably went back 4 or 5 times. So when I went to Seed of Chucky, I was a little bit let down. Initially, I didn't think it was as funny or as gory or as smart, and I didn't like it initially. I kind of walked out of the theater and went, meh. You know, I went to the bar and had a drink and went home. I wasn't too impressed. But like Glenn, not recently, Glenn didn't do his marathon recently, but I did a Chucky marathon not too long ago for our page, Horror Roar. Not a shameless plug, just literally a few months ago we did a marathon, and we call it, a theme week, where we just do one franchise for the whole week. So I watched every one of them back to back. And I'd owned Seed of Chucky with the box set, never had watched it since the theatrical release. And I really liked it. I was surprised. I couldn't figure out why I hadn't liked it initially. I don't think it's, obviously it's not a perfect film. It's far from a fucking classic. But I think Don Mancini, as I'm not sure if this is his first time directing. I think it was. Mm-hmm. But he, for sure, everything he did wrong here, he remedied with the following sequel, which is Curse of Chucky, which I think is, I still run into fans of Child's Play who haven't seen it, and I highly recommend checking it out, because it could almost be Child's Play 4 or Child's Play 3. It's almost like back in the vein of the first few, where the comedy is not so satirical, and the overall heart of the film is very cold and sinister. But in terms of Seed of Chucky, I mean, like Glenn said, it's Jennifer Tilly's show. If you like Jennifer Tilly, what better vehicle for Jennifer Tilly exists out there aside from maybe Bound? I mean, Bound is a great film too, and definitely is her movie. But this is like Jennifer Tilly's show, man. If you're a Jennifer Tilly fan, I mean, you should probably have this poster on your wall, because there's no other movie that's going to really give her the spotlight that this does. I mean, this allows her to sort of poke fun at her career and examine her career, and, she is a wonderful actress. I think maybe in spite or because of her big boobs, people don't realize how fucking talented she is. And the lady can act. I would work with her in a second. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't cast her as a bimbo, because I do think she has chops. I like the film. I've only seen it twice in my life, but having watched it again recently, I thought it was very witty and funny, and probably the weakest of the series, but still definitely a good horror comedy. I think Paul picked a fun flick to review. I like it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. I always remember the interesting marketing campaign they came up with for Seed of Chucky, where they actually had the condoms with Seed of Chucky with the movie. That was the first time I think I've ever seen a film's name, a mainstream film's name, on a pack of condoms. So that, I thought that was interesting. They did some other creative things too with the marketing of this, because it had been, yeah. Well, it had been a little while between Bride and Seed, I think, wasn't it?
It was. He had a hard time getting it made. I remember Fangoria published like 2 articles about how it's never going to happen. Seed of Chucky is dead in the water, and he just kept fighting for this thing.
Well, yeah, because I had remembered, because it was in development hell for quite some time, because he really wanted this made, and yeah, the video is the film is decent. I enjoy it. Yeah, cameos, the comedy, Billy Boyd in there for the voice of the son. It's got a little heart to it, on a knife. It was another one of those that it was like you said, it was very meta, which it was. It was self-aware. You know, it was a trend that we saw in some of these later films that were trying to revitalize or bring back the franchise, where they kind of poked fun at themselves, but at the same time were still trying to make a film that was in a similar vein, but maybe either be lighter or just kind of, you know, acknowledge the fact that some of it was cheesy, a la like Jason X, which I personally really love, though I know people hate.
Oh, I love it too.
I really enjoy Jason X for that similar thing, to where it's very self-aware and picks on its own tropes, you know. I don't mind that because it was never feel too mean-spirited. It was them acknowledging that and saying, okay, we're going to move on, you know. And so if they make another film after that, usually that film is going to be more serious than, say, one that they've brought up to revitalize a franchise that had been, you know, dead in the water or hadn't had much activity over the years. So, yeah, Seed of Chucky's a lot of fun. Good pick there, Paul. Excellent choice. And we'll move right down. Glenn, what about your choice for the evening?
What We Do in Shadows.
Oh, yeah. When I saw that you were going to bring that one, I was like, yes. Please inform our wonderful listeners who may not have heard about this film, but shame on you. You should have. Tell us about this film.
Well, yeah, it only came out last year.
Yeah.
There are a trio, well, actually a quartet of vampires that share a house in modern-day New Zealand. And there's a documentary crew is kind of like filming how they deal with regular life, paying the rent, doing the dishes, trying to go to nightclubs, and just general stuff that flatmates have to deal with. And I mean, first of all, I love Jermaine Clement. Flight of the Conchords. It's just I love his writing, and I think he co-wrote this with I can never pronounce his name right, Taika Waititi.
Yeah, I can never say it right either. I'm horrible with names.
And both of them also play two of the vampires. I absolutely love this movie. It plays on so many different vampire tropes, and just horror tropes in general. I love the werewolves in this, and I don't want to spoil things because there's some really great quotable lines out of this movie too. And I love the fact that it wasn't this, you know, came out of New Zealand. It's not a big budget Hollywood flick, but I think what they do with it is great. I mean, I love the acting of it. I love the setting. The house is fantastic, and I actually I love this movie. I have probably seen it 6 times.
Well, even for an independent project, I mean, the special effects in this film are actually really impressive. You don't get a huge amount, but when they do use them, I'm like, wow, okay, I'm impressed. You know, some of the scenes and stuff they do in here, especially with the budget they shot this on, really shows you what you can do with low budget cinema or a minimal budget. And in fact, if I remember correctly, they had to do their own Kickstarter campaign to get it distributed anywhere in the U.S. They got it to some screens, not a lot. I wish they would have got it to a lot more screens, because this is definitely a film that deserves a wide release, because I think everybody, I mean, it is a brilliant film. Paul, you've seen this film, haven't you?
I have not.
You haven't? Oh.
Yes. I'm going to probably be saying that a lot tonight because, again, I'm not a big fan of comedies, but I'm a big fan of horror.
This one is a must-watch. I know you're not a big fan of comedies, but trust me on this one. And Glenn, this one is I thought was brilliant. Dawn, you haven't seen this one either, have you?
I have not. It was actually it's on my list to watch, and if I would have known sooner, I would have made a point of watching it.
Oh, that's okay. Just know that it's really good, and you should watch it. Cole, have you seen What We Do in the Shadows?
Oh, fuck, man, no. I feel bad. I always watch everybody's choices, but I found out about Glenn's at like 8. So I couldn't. I just didn't have time. And Glenn is 90% of the time everything he recommends rocks my world. So I mean literally. And for those people listening who haven't liked B Movie Bunker on Facebook, if you're a Facebook guy, check it out because his reviews are astonishing. But I haven't seen it. I feel like shit.
This is
don't feel bad. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing till like 7:55.
It's okay. It's brilliant. This was one I have seen on the festival circuit for a long time, and I was really hoping, and I managed to talk to the PR folks there, and when they finally said that they were going to distribute it to the U.S., I managed to get a screener, and when I saw it, I thought it was just brilliant. And my wife and I don't exactly have the same tastes in films. Needless to say, she has higher tastes than mine. But when I watched this, I was like, honey, you have to watch this. It was one of those days I was trying to figure out what to watch. She came in the room, I came across it, I'm like, no, sit down and we're going to watch this. And she loved it. This is a film, if someone doesn't mind some gore, if you're a horror fan, or if you're just a fan of a good movie, you don't necessarily need to be a horror fan, but if you are a horror fan, you'll catch all the little tropes and stuff that they're acknowledging. But even if you're not, I think you'll enjoy this film. This is one that even horror fans, I think, will enjoy, because it's like Christopher Guest doing a vampire film.
Wow.
I mean, nice. It felt that good. Those mockumentaries he's done, just like in that vein of it. And from what I read, too, they did a good chunk of it, so the script was a bit improv. So because they do improv comedy, these gentlemen, and they do it well. And, yeah, I highly recommend it. This is a beautiful choice, Glenn, because it's probably one of my favorite modern horror-themed films to come out in a good long while.
So is it a film that you can watch solo, or is it one that it's only funny in a group?
It's funny solo in a group, while you're laying in bed trying to sleep. Nice. It'll keep you awake, but I watched it by myself. I was rolling. I mean, there's characters in here that try not to spoil it too much for you, but let's just say there's a representation of the vampires you've seen in past. Mm-hmm. There's a representation of each type of vampire in here, and
nice.
And they work all the angles, and yeah, I mean, there's nothing really scary about it. But it's not meant to be a scary film, but it is a horror-themed comedy that. Yeah, I think about it now, and I'm smiling and trying not to laugh because, wouldn't you say, Glenn, it's one of those films, once you watch it, like you said, there's a number of quotable things in it, and it's one of those films you start thinking about, and, go ahead.
I mean, just so much good stuff. I mean, the fact that, Jermaine Clement, his vampire, he based off of Gary Oldman in Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a brilliant homage to the Gary Oldman in Dracula.
Wow, that sounds good, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you haven't checked it out, folks, please put that on your list. If you're doing the 31 Days of Horror, this will count, trust me. But yeah, it is. It shows you, it's one of those reasons why I enjoy indie films, and people go, well, why do you enjoy indie films? I go, see this movie, and this is why I like watching through all these indie films, because you find films like this. Not all of them are going to be like this, but you do find those films. So,
I'm remembering lines from it now that are just so great, and I don't want to say them because I don't want to ruin it. So
I know. Really, it is from start to finish. This film, don't take it like a, don't go into it expecting anything like a serious horror film. But if you just go into it looking to be entertained, you will definitely be that.
I'm going to spoil one line.
Go ahead.
To give you an idea of the type of movie it is. So this is two of the vampires talking to her, where one of them says, "I think we drink virgin blood because it sounds cool." Which the other guy says, well, I think of it like this. If you're going to eat a sandwich, you would just enjoy it more if you knew that no one had fucked it.
And that right,
I've never even heard of this film.
yes, and that right there sums up exactly the film and the type of humor that's in there.
Yeah.
There's so much dialogue like that, and you have to pay attention too, because you might miss it in a conversation. Because I've watched it a couple times, and there are a couple times where like, oh, that's what it did. I caught another joke that I might have missed before. So yeah. Excellent choice. What We Do in the Shadows, highly recommended, and a brilliant choice. And let's go down. We'll do Cole's next. I want to save Dawn's to last. So, Cole, why don't you tell us which film you brought to the table tonight?
Well, it was hard. This is why I love being a part of this group and being in all of your wonderful people's lives, as it gives me an opportunity to expend all this useless movie knowledge I have. But the horror comedy, I feel, is like such an underappreciated genre, sort of like the vampire western. It really just
Sorry.
more of these movies. I mean, honestly, what's better than like Near Dark or John Carpenter's Vampires? Why don't they do more vampire westerns? And I feel the same way about this genre. Originally, I was going to talk about Nothing But Trouble, but there was a delay in our episode for understandable reasons, so my mind wandered, and I thought, well, I'll do 2014's Creep. And then my girlfriend said, Cole, that movie's really not that funny. You're just sick. So I decided to go with a movie I've been watching probably 5 times a day. I have a broken tailbone for our listeners who want to know more than they need to know about me. I've had a broken tailbone, so I've been doing a lot of standing with beer in my hand. And The Burbs is on Netflix, and this is a very special film to me. A little bit of history. I grew up in the middle of nowhere. I began my life in Madison, Wisconsin, and then we moved to Viroqua, Wisconsin, and existed in a farm that was. This is before cell phones, before internet. I mean, I'm not an old codger, but I'm coming up on 37. So when I was a teenager, there was no way to connect with anybody if you lived in the boonies. And there was a little video station at a nearby grocery store way back when you had VHS tapes. And Burbs was one of about 30 movies they had, thank God. And I would rent it with my allowance every Friday and spend the weekend watching it, and it saved my life. It really did. The humor in it as a kid was just so clicked with me. Of course, in those days, I connected with Corey Feldman's character because, he was, I wasn't a parent yet. I didn't have an adult life yet, so I kind of watched it through his eyes. Recently, having rediscovered this film with my girlfriend who had never seen it, which is such a joy to watch somebody discover a movie that you love so much, is really it's such a joy. But watching it now, I find myself relating very much with the Tom Hanks character, which, especially living in Viroqua, which, not to badmouth any of my neighbors, is a pretty odd town. There's a lot of odd people, and not people who are necessarily, evil or demonic, but definitely, maybe you wouldn't trust them alone with your dog. So I really connect to the idea that your neighbors are doing weird things, and you came to, the Burbs to sort of relax and maybe live out your later years in comfort, and there are these people who are just to summarize the movie, there's like loud noises coming out of the basement. Tom Hanks's character, who is the lead character, will wake up in the middle of the night to find characters dressed like the little dune guys, the little sand dune characters from Star Wars, digging holes in their backyard. And At one point, they find a femur bone. The dog brings them over a femur bone, and they're so nonchalant that they're throwing the femur bone like a stick for 2 or 3 times before they realize it's a bone, which is the type of humor that's all over in this movie. And that's the first half of the movie, and then the latter half of the movie is all of the neighbors sort of rally together to try and figure out whether their neighbors are literally satanic murderers or whether they're just sort of pigeonholing their neighbors for just being non-social. And man, I'm probably over philosophizing this. I mean, I'm sure Joe Dante, the director who also did Gremlins and Explorers and lots of great horror comedies, would say, "Hey, Cole, you're reading way too deep into this." It's a really goofy, silly horror comedy to me that speaks to the notion of who is crazy, the people who keep away and keep to themselves, or the people who want to know way too much about your business. And this is a film that I would never want to see remade, but I could see being remade with the notion of Facebook and, social technology and the ability to see way more into your neighbor's life than you ever have. I was amazed. I recently applied for an apartment just to have an office space, and my landlord dug up a lease I'd skipped out of when I was 22. So I think The Burbs could be done in a very interesting way now, where you can find out everything you need to know about your neighbor when maybe they just want to keep to themselves. But all of that aside, this is a great horror comedy. Rest in peace, Rick Duckeman. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right.
Dukeman.
Thank you very much. This is perhaps his only leading role. I mean, I've seen him in little bits in like The Last Boy Scout. He has about 5 seconds in that. And I've seen him in random other places. I believe he's in Groundhog Day, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Where I know him predominantly from, aside from The Burbs, is his phenomenal stand-up comedy. I'm not sure if it's on YouTube, but man, I mean, some of the best stand-up comedy I've seen since Bill Hicks or George Carlin. The guy has a gift for comedy. It's too bad he didn't go on to other leading roles. From what I've read on the ever-reliable Wikipedia, he beat out Rick Moranis for this role, and thank God, although I love Rick Moranis. Rick was definitely the guy for this movie. Bruce Dern, Carrie Fisher as Tom Hanks' wife. All of their dialogue was improvised. Yeah, I could go on and on and on. I love this movie. It's funny as shit. I've watched it multiple times every day for, I don't know, 2-3 weeks. I never get sick of it.
Well, it is a decent film. There are a lot of great names in it. Dawn, what about you with this film?
Oh, I haven't seen this movie in forever, but I remember liking it a lot. I remember this was the first time I realized that seeing this film was the first time I realized that Carrie Fisher was not only Princess Leia. It was a big deal for me, because she was Princess Leia. That was it. She couldn't possibly be anybody else. And Bruce Dern, I remember loving what he did with that character.
Yeah,
he is probably the most memorable character out of that whole movie for me, bar none.
Yeah, Bruce Dern was great. I tried to catch any movie that he was in because he was just one of those that would crop up in a lot of places, especially in the around that time. And this was '89. So as far as Carrie Fisher goes, you had Return of the Jedi, which had come out in '83, and that's what most people remember her as. Though she was also in The Man with One Red Shoe. So she did make some number of appearances, but of course, everybody recognized her as Princess Leia. So this was one of the ones I remember watching and going, "Hey, that's Princess Leia."
Yeah, and I knew she was in Blues Brothers because that was obviously prior to this, but still, It's Princess Leia.
It's Princess Leia, and she's talking to Tom Hanks. What the heck?
Yeah.
Glenn in the Burbs.
I want to kill everyone. Satan is good. Satan is your pal. When this was on HBO, I probably watched it 7,000 times.
Well, it was shown on HBO about 7,000 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this movie. I think it's highly underrated.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes.
And it's a segment. I mean, people look at Tom Hanks now, and Tom Hanks makes these these amazing serious movies, and he goes on space shuttles and he gets trapped in airports and whatnot. But he really, he cut his teeth doing comedy, and a lot of his comedy is not great.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't think he has done much that's really bad. It's just he did a lot of kind of average 80s comedies, but this one I just loved. It was kind of a, I don't even know how to, and I think a big part of it was the cast that was around him too. Tom Hanks does that kind of stressed, just done with everything kind of funny. He does that really well.
Yeah.
Like at the end where he's, take me to the hospital. Take me to the hospital. And Bruce Dern and Rick Dukeman, and Corey Feldman in here too, if I remember right.
Yep, there's Corey Feldman.
And Henry Gibson as the neighbor, who I have loved him since I saw him as an Illinois Nazi in Blues Brothers. So, the guy's just, and he's been in like 78 million different things.
Yeah.
And the dog from Silence of the Lambs, actually.
Also, making an appearance in this film is Dick Miller and Robert Picardo. So you got a couple.
Wow.
You got a couple other. They played the Garbage Men.
Yeah.
They were originally meant to be discovered in the trunk at the end, but they shot about a dozen different endings, because in the original ending, Tom Hanks dies. That's the ending. Is you believe they're innocent. They've finally gotten off. Tom Hanks has stood up for him. He said, "Look, we're the psychos." He climbs into the ambulance, and the whole family is there, and they all turn to him and go, "Time to go." And the ambulance drives off, and that's your fucking ending. But of course, when Tom Hanks was cast, the studio said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa. You can't do that." So they shot about a dozen different endings, but one of the endings was Dick Miller and the other, I forget the actor's name.
Robert Picardo.
Yes. Yeah. They were supposed to be in the trunk, which I think would have been great. But when the studio makes you change your ending, how do you stay true to yourself? You do, what you can do.
Yeah, it is such a fun film. Paul, what about you? Any thoughts with this film?
I just have to say that whenever Cole describes a movie, I always want to watch it. Because, my God, I never wanted to watch this movie until now. So I'm going to watch this movie.
You've forgiven me for my rant against Silent Hill Revelation. So.
That was so fun. It was still good. It was still good.
I felt like such an asshole that night, man.
But your rant about Silent Hill Revelation still made me want to watch that movie because it was my pick.
No, but actually, Paul, you make a good point. It's exactly what Cole mentioned, and I think Dawn and Glenn both kind of reinforced, is this is kind of that under-the-radar film that came out and went, and people kind of forget that's out there, but there's some brilliant cast. There's a great script. It plays off of, we're talking late 80s here, 89, so the whole suburbia thing. We've covered this in our other films, especially when we were doing the 25th anniversary films, where the yuppie and the suburbanites are kind of demonized in a lot of films, or made not to be pleasant people. So here we have a film that's basically taking your paranoid neighbors who are have were popular back then, a popular subject in the suburbs, nosy neighbors, and that it plays off of that and off of those paranoias that you've heard or maybe even experienced in your own home with those neighbors who are wondering about that strange family down at the end of the block, and it just amps it up, and it plays off of those things that are, especially back then, were very common in culture at that time as far as discussion topics. So The Burbs is definitely one you should check out if you're a Joe Dante fan, if you're just looking for a fun horror comedy. I think it still stands the test of time, like a number of horror comedies, because they don't have a huge amount of special effects, but what they do in there I think stands the test of time and are just a lot of fun. So The Burbs, check it out if you haven't yet. And now to Dawn. I wanted to leave Dawn's to last because she told me what she was going to bring to the table, and please, by all means, Dawn, tell us what film you brought us tonight.
So, in 1978, mysterious attacks allegedly committed by the formerly peaceful Tomato have erupted into a full-blown war on humanity. A special task force of experts in their respective fields is led by Mason Dixon, and which was formed by the government to put a stop to the attack of the killer tomatoes. This movie is so 70s. I have not seen. I love this movie. This is a movie my son and I would watch routinely together. I watch this every year. It is outrageous. It is avocado green. And it's a musical.
Yes.
You get some wonderful musical numbers in here.
Sorry, I'm going to start singing the theme song in a minute. So, go on, Dawn, please.
We talked about Seed of Chucky being meta, but this one is. It's got so much packed into it. From nods to Superman, to the Olympics. Oh God, you got nods to. Oh God, was it the whole Godzilla Japanese movies?
The kaiju
that whole the whole kaiju. You've got nods to everything, and the dry humor. There's so much going on in the background of every single scene. There's something happening that you really have to watch every detail on this. I love this movie, and it is very, very 1970s, and it's kind of painfully 1970s. And it is so avocado green.
And Paul, what about you? Have you watched Attack of the Killer?
I saw the sequel, The Return of the Killer Tomatoes.
Oh, but you haven't seen the original?
I haven't seen the original, no. But I do remember that Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, had hosted an episode of this, but I never got to watch it.
That was my first experience of Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, was thanks to the lovely and ever, fantastic Elvira, was the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. We used to watch it all the time, late nights. They'd turn on the show, and she played this. And that was the first time I saw it, and after I saw it, I wanted to watch the non-Elvira version, though the Elvira version was always entertaining, but again, at the age that I was at. Anyway, yeah, I remember, I just love, this film is so whacked, and this was one of those that was one of the first, for me, introductions to low-budget independent film, because this was a low-budget independent film. And I loved it just for all the references. And yeah, even though it's 78, you could find a lot of humor in it even today. Glenn, what about you with Attack?
I love Attack. I remember seeing this. I don't know which horror host I saw it with. It may have been with Toulouse No-Neck on Shock Theater. I can't remember, but I remember seeing it on a Saturday afternoon the first time, and I thought it was ridiculous and stupid and moronic, and I loved it. And I also love the fact that it spawned a sequel.
Yeah.
It spawned 3 sequels.
Yep.
Well, yes, but there's only one that really counts, and that's the one with George Clooney.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, you heard that right, folks. George Clooney. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I mean, if I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. If I had thought, if I had the technology that I have now back then, I would have immediately gone out and made my own movie after watching this. Because it just made me feel like heck, anyone can make a movie because they made this thing, and it's still fun. No, it's still fun. So I don't know. I think it's hard. It's really hard to make a fun bad. I mean, they did not set out to make a good movie. I mean, they weren't. I mean, to make a movie that was to be taken seriously and stuff like that. And it's hard to do a movie that is made to be this kind of cheap looking. I mean, I know it was made cheap as well, but I mean, just this kind of ridiculous, off the wall, nonsense film, and to do it where it's still enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't have to look any further than the 99 out of 100 times that Asylum fails at doing exactly this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those films that all these modern films really wish they could be, but they can't because they just don't have that heart and that. Yeah, it was made by people who had a 35 millimeter camera and wanted to shoot a movie, and their budget was actually it was pretty high for the film of this nature, which is $90,000. Though, according to some trivia, $60,000 of that was due to the fact of an inadvertent accident with a helicopter scene, which they ad-libbed and turned into and worked into the film.
Holy crap! It's a director's cut.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a director's cut, but apparently, according to some trivia, is that the helicopter crashed, and so they quickly got the actors together and they set the wreckage on fire and did an ad-lib scene for that.
Nice.
Because I guess some crew members nearly got hit with debris. But yeah, this film is just so wild. I love all the aspects of it. It by no means should be taken as a serious film, but you gotta respect the stuff they were doing in here, don't you, Cole?
Oh yeah, I actually when Dawn mentioned this, I was embarrassed to think. Well, I'd never seen it, and then I went back and rewatched it, and I had seen it. In fact, we had it. I'm not sure if it was on Betamax, but it was on one of those oversized, huge cases they used to make.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You guys remember those? Like it, it was like a huge, fat case, and I liked it a lot, and I agree with what Glenn said. Like the technology had been around. I mean, I may have not have had this reaction to this movie specifically, but say, if when I'd seen the stuff, I was able to film a movie with my cell phone, I would have gone out and done something like that. This is that type of movie. It feels very tongue-in-cheek, but it has heart, and it's smart. I mean, to make a movie a good movie that's technically adept, you've got to have concentration, man. You've got to have some finesse. You really do, and this movie has that. It has all those things, and it's also fucking funny. and I like it. I liked it a lot. To be honest, our computer was freezing that night, so it wasn't the most enjoyable watch for me. You know, just what happens when you don't buy a movie. When you watch something online, you can't complain when computer freezes. But I liked it, and I'm gonna actually add it to my collection. I'm hoping there's a 2-pack with this and Return out there somewhere. You know, that'd be awesome.
There's so many great moments in this, and there's a song that just is going to be ear-piercing, but it's supposed to be ear-piercing. It makes fun of the 70s songs even in this film with Puberty Love, which is a great title in itself. One of my favorite scenes in Killer Tomatoes, they do play off a lot of the classic late 50s, 60s, early 60s monster films as well with this. Yeah. And they parody that fairly well. One of the best ones is they're doing a montage thing about the threat of the tomatoes, and it's great because the tomatoes roll and they make this noise like but my favorite scene is still they're doing this whole montage and tomatoes are running rampant and it's in the culture now. Everybody's aware of these killer tomatoes. They've got I think it's a library full of people. Or a cafeteria, and the one guy just looks up and it's what? I'm sorry.
It's a library.
Library, and the one guy just looks up and goes, "Tomato," and everybody runs screaming out of the building. I just that scene. I always enjoyed that scene so much, just because of the way it was directed. But yeah, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Don't let the fact that it was made in '78 turn you away from this film. You were saying, Glenn?
Oh, I was just singing the song. Attack
of the Killer Tomatoes. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. How can you go wrong with a theme song like that? Any other thoughts on Killer Tomatoes, Don? Besides that it rocks.
It's awesome. It's and the second one is definitely worthwhile. After I saw the second one, the one with George Clooney, I wanted a fuzzy tomato so bad. I wanted a fuzzy tomato. Yes. I wanted my own little FP. No, but it is. It's brilliant, and it was after this, 2 years after this, 1980, that Airplane came out.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know how many seriously parody movies came out before Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, but I know the go-to one came 2 years after this.
Wow.
Yeah, there weren't a huge amount. If they were, they weren't nearly as popular, I think, as this one. This one definitely brought it to the forefront, and then followed up afterwards with Airplane, which actually had a similar energy to Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, quite a bit, to where Attack of the Killer Tomatoes is like a number of skits or concepts that are all related, but they're put together, all these short, really funny scenes, and Airplane's similar. I mean, you got an arcing story, but if you look at the way it's shot in bits. And Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, at least to me, felt similar to that in a good way. So yeah, that's why I wanted to leave yours to last, because this one is a special place in my heart. I remember first seeing it as a kid on Elvira, Mistress of the Dark show, and I watched it many times afterwards. So great choices by everyone, and I guess I'm the only one left here tonight, so I'm going to bring up a film I may have brought up before in the spoiler room, and I do apologize, folks, but when this came up, I was trying to decide, what am I going to pick, and I ended up choosing the Raven, the original The Raven, well, not the original, but the 1963 film, The Raven, directed by Mr. Roger Corman himself, and it's about a magician who has basically turned into a raven, and he visits a fellow magician to help, one, get himself turned back, and also help that former magician who he says how he got turned into, the castle he's at, is the holding the soul or the ghost of the Lost Lenore. Yes, it is based loosely off the Edgar Allan Poe poem, and I do mention loosely, though they do mention, read part of it in the beginning. And this film, I can't recommend this film enough to people. Don't let the fact that it came from '63 turn you away from it. Roger Corman directing this cast of Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, Boris Karloff, Hazel Court, Jack Nicholson in this film. A young Jack Nicholson in this film. Oh, this film is so brilliant on comedic levels, folks. This is one of those where it is funny, it's poking fun at the monster films, but at the same time, it's its own movie. And from start to finish, I mean, Vincent Price is just brilliant in it. And then you enter in Peter Lorre and the scenes with those two. And then you get Boris Karloff mixed in there, and I could just watch those scenes all day. It's just such a classic, and such really well-directed film. I love this film, if you can't tell, and it must be seen by you if you're a fan at all of any of these performers, of Roger Corman, or just classic horror films, because it's from start to finish, I really have if not any problems with it at all. Glenn, The Raven?
I saw this, I don't know how many years ago.
Uh-huh.
I would have to visit again because I barely remember anything in it. I remember Peter Lorre, who I love Peter Lorre. But it's been a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
I just added it to my list of films to track down.
Yeah, it's a little tough to track down. It came out on a Midnight Madness DVD double feature, along with what is it? Comedy of Horrors, or I forgot what.
Comedy of Terrors.
Terrors, thank you. I always call it Comedy of Horrors, but Comedy of Terrors. It's a great DVD. It's out of print now, I think. My wife got me a copy of it for a present, but the DVD's out of print. But yeah, this film is just so excellent on so many levels. Cole, what about you? The Raven, have you seen it?
Oh, man, no. It's 2 strikes tonight.
Okay.
I have not. And I definitely, it's not because of some prejudice for old movies. My black and white collection, my collection of movies before 1970 is huge. I mean, literally big. But I've never even heard it mentioned.
No, and that's the thing, is it is one of those films that people kind of forgot. But with this cast, how could you? But it does kind of get lost in the shuffle a bit. And it was shot in color. But it
was?
Yeah, this was shot in color, and just the delivery. It's Peter Lorre alone, as Glenn mentioned. It's worth it for Peter Lorre alone. He's brilliant in it, and then playing off of the classic Vincent and Boris. Oh man, some of this dialogue in here just sticks with you. Paul, have you seen The Raven?
I'm batting 0.
Oh, sorry about that.
I'm hitting the video store after this.
Video store goes like, wow, we got the most business we've ever gotten for quite some time. Don, tell me how you feel.
Oh God, I love this movie. This too is one of my favorite horror comedies ever. I remember the first time I saw this, and I was completely enchanted by it. It reminded me so much of the Hammer films.
It was supposed to be a send-up to the Hammer films a bit too. I mean, you can tell from the style.
So. But it's my understanding that Jack Nicholson and Peter Lorre kept ad-libbing their lines, which makes it even the more awesome, because, I mean, Jack Nicholson, this was fairly early in his career, and he was already that comfortable with comedy and horror to be able to ad-lib this. And it was Jack Nicholson in tights, for God's sakes.
Yeah, I know.
I gotta see this.
Yes.
It's just wonderful. Vincent Price I'm sputtering because there's so many thoughts.
Well,
It was brilliant. It was comedic. I thought it was going to be more serious, and it was absolutely a romp.
and that's what the thing is. I think a lot of people go into this film. You look at this group of actors, and you're thinking it's going to be more serious. I mean, you've got Vincent Price, who was, the horror guy, and Peter Lorre, who was, in a number of genre films and such, playing kind of a bad guy or, a seedy guy, and the classic Karloff in here. So you're thinking, okay, and even the talented Hazel Court in here playing Lenore, you're like, okay, it's going to be a series. And then you get in here, and it starts off kind of moody, like your late '60s horror, or early '60s horror film. Like you're okay, and then Peter Lorre shows up, and then it just takes this wild ride from there. I mean, he's got so many great lines in here. One of my favorite lines in here is he's I'm trying not to spoil too much, but I have to share because it's one of my all-time favorite lines, and I use it randomly in life. It's one of those quotes I just spout out, but he's taking on, basically, Peter Lorre's decided to get his revenge, and he's taking on the magician that turned him into a raven, and they're kind of going back and forth, and he drops the line, "You're defending yourself, you coward." And for me, I just love how that rolls off. I'm like, "You're defending yourself, you coward." But yeah, Jack Nicholson is hilarious. A young Jack Nicholson in here, playing kind of the straight man in here, sort of.
Man, his gift for comedy. I remember the original version of Little Shop of Horrors.
Mm-hmm.
He played like a 5-minute scene where he's getting his teeth drilled, but he's addicted to the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that is a must-see scene. His gift for comedy goes deep, man. He always got it. I mean, it didn't just start at The Shining. Obviously, I haven't seen the movie you guys are talking about, but I still have my original little black and white Little Shop of Horrors on VHS, and I watch it frequently. And Jack Nicholson's scene in that is invaluable. He's into it, man. He's got a deep understanding of what it is to be horrific and comedic simultaneously.
Well, and the sets too, Don. Wouldn't you say that the sets are actually really impressive?
They're huge, sweeping Gothic vistas.
Yeah.
They're grandiose, very much so. But going back to Peter Lorre and Jack Nicholson, or Peter Lorre and Jack Nicholson improvising, I just wanted to mention that their characters are father and son.
Wow. Yes.
For the people who don't know that yet.
Yeah, they do play father and son, and Jack Nicholson plays kind of not necessarily a manly man in this role. he's kind of a dandy. He's a dandy. He's a mama's boy, kind of. And this script was written by the same guy who wrote The Comedy of Terrors. And he'd go on. He wrote a lot of TV shows, scripts, but he would also go on to do feature films later on in the 80s. He wrote the screenplay. Same guy who wrote the screenplay for this wrote the screenplay for Jaws 3D. And Loose Cannons, Stir of Echoes. Richard Matheson wrote the screenplay for The Raven, and it's one of those where you should watch it just for this cast alone. I mean, it's not often you get a film with a cast with this many memorable performers, and each one isn't trying to outdo the other, which is what I liked about it as well. I mean, you could get some of these ensemble casts like that, and you always feel like one's trying to kind of stand out over the others, but in this one, I never felt like there was any real competition. Everybody felt like they were behind the film and just having fun with it. Wouldn't you say, Dawn?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I know that, yeah, absolutely. There was definitely a lot of fun had in this.
I know Karloff didn't quite like the improv because he was more of a script guy, but
I think too he was having a lot of issues and with pain at about that time in his life. He was struggling even with walking.
yeah, he was. He was having some health issues, so a lot of the scenes in this film, he's actually sitting down in it, and it wasn't just it was actually a real life health thing he was having, but he still finished it out, you know. But Corman really bringing it with this film, and it's just fun. It's not what you expect at all from when you see this cast or the subject matter, but yeah. So that's my choice, is The Raven. I headed back to really old school. But for me, that's one of those I continually watch and continually enjoy. In one of those where I say all the lines with the film people, and it's still a lot of fun. And I think other people will enjoy it too, especially if you're a fan of any of these actors. So that's about wrapping up. It shows you that you can have laughs along with scares this October. Hope we gave you a list of films that you will head to your video store, like our own Paul here will do, to check out. I hope you enjoyed the listen. We're going to go down real quick, as we always do here on the Spoiler Room, and give our Spoiler Room crew a chance to tell us a little bit about where you can find their stuff when they're not on here. Go ahead, Cole.
Thanks for having me once again. Sorry for my broken tailbone. I'm on some painkillers, so I apologize if I wasn't as articulate as I normally am. You can find me on Facebook right now. Horror Roar is where I post my fan art. My production company's page is Shadows and Lovers Productions. Also on Facebook, we've got a fairly significant movie coming out, significant in that it took 4 years to make, and it's a complete labor of love made on very little money, but the quality is high. Also, if you just want to talk movies and you're not a complete psycho, feel free to just find Cole Meredith and friend me, because I love to talk movies. And once again, please visit the pages that everybody else here talks about, because these guys know a lot about movies, and unlike the majority of propaganda you'll find on the internet, these people actually love movies. Don and Glenn and Paul and Mark are in love with movies, and they're not going to hate just because they want to hate. So.
Well, thank you, Paul. Cole, excuse me. Thinking Paul. I'm thinking of Paul. I'm looking at him. So, thank you, Cole. And Dawn, go ahead.
You can find me in theaudience.net.
Fantastic. Some great reviews. She's got some new stuff on there, so check it out. And Glenn, go ahead.
You can find me on YouTube, Naked Hobo Productions, and the B-Movie Bunker, or just follow me on Twitter at Naked Hobo.
Yes, the man is a reviewing beast this month. Make sure you check it out. He's doing 31 Days of Horror, and he's posting reviews of the films he's watching. So you best check it out, because that man is just a reviewing beast this month. And then next to him, Paul, go ahead. Tell us where we can find you at.
You can find me at Facebook, Twitter, and WordPress at Forsaken Film Reviews.
Fantastic. And as always, you can find their links on specialmarkproductions.com, where you can find my stuff as well as the archive of the Spoiler Room. You can find some of the other videos I do for some of the other sites, some great interviews that we got, which I hope to get more of before the end of the year. Speaking of, if you're a horror fan and you're in Wisconsin area, check out the Madtown Horror Film Festival that is coming up in October 24th and 25th. I was a judge for it. I will be there. Some of our Spoiler Room crew may be there, so you can check it out. Some great indie horror. So if you're in the area, please come and help support some independent horror. Check out specialmarkproductions.com, and you can find us at Twitter on Spoiler Room PDCS. So that's P as in Paul, D as in David, C as in Cat, S as in Sam. I couldn't make it any more complicated. But Spoiler Room Podcast, basically, PDCS, at there on the Twitter and also the email spoilerroom.smp@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening to us talk tonight about horror comedies. Please make sure you comment and tip your waitresses. And until next time, remember, with the Spoiler Room, the conversation is fresh, but the movies are definitely spoiled. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes! Attack!